Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hi there, welcome to today's episode. This is The Inner Edge with me, Shane Craddock. You're very welcome. Today I am talking about something for me that is critically important. In many ways, I think it's quite scary in relation to what's going on around this particular topic. And I'm very, very interested myself in this whole area. I'm doing a lot of research around this at the moment because I believe this area is getting worse, and it's the area of your attention. And the flip side of that is perhaps the lack of attention or distraction. And there is a phrase that's, you hear more and more about, almost the distraction economy. But there's also linked to that is the attention economy, is in terms of, technology companies, all companies, and perhaps, we can all be guilty of this. We're all trying to get people's attention. We're trying to get our customers' attention. Perhaps we're trying to sell things. We're trying to market things online, on social media. And all the biggest and best technology companies in the world, they all know that the most valuable commodity really when it comes to making money is people's attention. And I am very, very interested in the power of our focus, both as individuals and then as collectively in terms of teams and organizations, communities, and even societies at large. If you can harness attention on the right things, it's incredible what can happen. And sustaining attention on something is just incredibly powerful, especially over time. But there was some research I was looking at recently and this was done a few years ago, so it's probably worse, but they were looking at what's the average ability of somebody in an office or work environment, their ability to sustain attention, as in to stay focused on something without getting distracted, either by a person or even by mentally themselves thinking, oh, let me just check email, or let me check my phone, or let me just go over here and make a cup of tea. That's distraction. So what was the average time? What would you think it would be? What would be your guess? Anyway, this particular research, what they found was that it was 3 minutes on average, which is I just think that that's shocking. So maybe to you it's not, but I think to me it's incredibly shocking. And actually the research that was for office workers. For students, it was worse. It was literally, I think, less than a minute. And what we're seeing on average is that there's a decline in our ability to hold our focus, hold our attention. And in essence, really, because a lot of this is coming through technology, even though we have a responsibility around it, but I'm going to say that your attention is being hacked. It's being hacked in a way that is very dangerous because maybe we're not fully aware of it. Now, I remember somebody that I did work with many years ago, they gave me a question to consider often, which is a hard question to answer, but if you stay with it, it's very powerful. And the question was, what can't you see? And what they used to say to me is, well, what can't you see? Because what you can't see is generally what's going to hurt you. I was having a conversation with somebody who has a new business recently where they were talking about the impact of electromagnetic waves on our bodies, our health, our minds. I mean, I certainly can't see that. But after listening to them speak about it, I was very interested in that in terms of, okay, well, I can't see these waves, like things like Wi-Fi signals, phone signals. What are they doing to us? The other thing I can't see is I can't necessarily see some of the things that my customers are saying about my business, or I can't see if I have a big team, is there a problem in an area of my business? And it's important to kind of figure out the top things, try to figure out what can't you see. But I think in the context of what we're talking about today, that we can't see the erosion of our attention and we can't see the consequences of that, really. Now, there are some people, some very clever people looking at things like this, which is great. But I just wonder if they're being listened to, and if I can help shine a little bit of attention on them and their work and the impact of it, then, well, hopefully that's a good thing. One of those people is a guy called Dr. James Williams, former Google strategist, now He is working in Oxford University in the area of philosophy and ethics of technology. He's been called one of the most important philosophers of attention in the world. And one of the things that he has pointed out through his research is that, and I think this is common sense, is that we need to be able to give attention to the right things, as in the things that matter most. And if we can't do that collectively as a society, well, then we have a big problem. And we do have big problems right now in terms of global level, in terms of the climate. There's political challenges everywhere. There's impacts on the financial system. So there's a lot of problems that we have to deal with. There's war. And he gives a metaphor which I love, which is about driving a car. And he says, if you're driving a car and let's just say somebody throws a bucket of mud on your windshield and you're trying to, maybe you're trying to go about going to the shops or going to a specific location. There's loads of jobs to do. But the bottom line is you can't do any of that until you clean the windshield. You have to clean the windshield. You got to be able to see where you're going. You got to be able to see outside. And he likens the mud to this overwhelming barrage of information that's coming at us every day and that we let it in. A lot of it just through our own ways of being distracted, having phones, looking at them all the time. And so really what we're doing is we need to stop and think, well, hang on, there's so much mud on the windshield, I actually don't even know where I'm going. And I'm finding more and more in my work that actually is the case. And I want to share with you, he kind of gives an analogy, which I really think is clever, around looking at your attention, that it takes three forms. And he kind of suggests three forms of light. And there's a lot in this. So the first one is, think about spotlight. That's the first level of attention, spotlight. So if you think about that, spotlight generally will have a narrow focus. It's more to do with the immediate actions you need to get done probably today, this week, or the next hour. And essentially, if you disrupt that focus, it kind of stops your ability to carry out near-term actions. And, if the average attention span of sustained focus is 3 minutes, that kind of answers the question that the spotlight ability of people is being compromised. And from my point of view, I think most productivity advice is kind of in this zone. It's about trying to help people improve their sharp focus. That seems to be the area of most interest for people. Yet there are two other areas that really, I think, are probably more important, and they impact actually the strength of your spotlight hugely. And the second one is starlight. And that's if you think about a starlight, okay, the starlight metaphor he uses there is to do with, well, hang on, when I get distracted or busy or confused or fed up or whatever, disillusioned, I can stop and I can look up in the sky, maybe find the star, the North Star, whatever it is, and remind myself, oh yeah, that's the direction that I'm heading. So it's more to do with your longer term goals or projects that take more time. They would take more sustained attention. So it could be like, for example, writing a book, setting up a business, growing a business, selling a business, or any specific project that just takes time. And when you get distracted, then you lose sight of those longer term goals, the direction, the meaning around why you're doing what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So if starlight is compromised, that's a big deal because you're probably not going to be operating strategically in your work or indeed your life. And then the third one is definitely the most important and is definitely the most compromised at the moment. And he uses the phrase daylight. So we have spotlight, starlight, and now daylight. And he says, well, look, if you think about daylight, it just enhances your ability to see what's going on around you. And essentially, it almost, in this metaphor, it makes it possible to know what your longer term goals are. And almost in terms of why you're going after them, it opens up an ability to even look at, well, who am I? Why am I here? What impact do I want to make? And when you get distracted hugely and your attention is compromised, it kind of compromises that ability to figure out who you are, what you want, or where you want to go. And it's definitely the deepest, and I would suggest the most damaging form of distraction, because it stops you having that inner space to have clarity about yourself. So I think a logical question is, okay, well, how do I improve my spotlight, my starlight, my daylight? I think it's to understand, and this is even one of my reasons for writing the book Inner CEO, and it's one of the reasons why I do the work that I do. It's just to understand the importance of your attention and also the nature of those three different types of attention, those three different types of light, as he calls them. But how do you get more? How do you improve it? One is realize it's been taken away. That's number one. Two, understand the importance of it. And then three, consider bringing in more sustained periods of reflection into your days, into your weeks. Allow mind wandering. There's a huge amount of science now and research coming out to show that actually staying on all the time, staying focused is actually, like, too focused is not good for you. So it's good to have your mind to wander because it allows the unconscious mind to make connections. It allows your intuition to come in. It allows also for deeper thinking. And there's no doubt in my mind that we are in the middle of an attention crisis. People talk about a climate crisis and political crisis. For me, the one that concerns me in my work, also as a father, just as a human being, is there is an attention crisis because we're being deprived of those three forms of light, of attention. I suppose you could say we're losing our light in a way. And I think at the core of it is to understand the value of a calm, clear mind, something you would have heard me speak about a lot over the course of these podcasts. And it's not just about calm, clear mind in the next 5 minutes. I mean, that's always good, but it's in a wider context of your day-to-day life. And when I say that your attention is being hacked, if you think about hackers online, I'm not an expert on this by any means at all, but a hacker, as I understand it, what they do is when they want to attack a website or shut it down or compromise it, they essentially kind of get many computers out there to connect and then to kind of all direct their focus and power onto a website to basically overwhelm it. And in a way, our minds are almost like that website that's open to attack. But we're so inundated with distraction, information through our phones, emails, our own minds, our lack of our mind management, that we just can't get perspective. And social media perhaps is definitely designed to hack our attention, maybe one of the biggest distractions, even for business people, LinkedIn. But it's much more than that. It's a systemic thing. And on a very simple level, this is why I'd often say to my clients, look, ultimately the enemy of attention is a busy, full mind. And while I might blame everybody else, ultimately, this is where I have to be the CEO of my inner world. I've got to be the boss of my mind. Now, one of the things, for example, just on what's a practical solution? There's lots of different things. I think, first of all, there's an awareness, there's education. And then you can actually ask yourself, well, how much am I picking up my phone anyway? How much am I distracting myself? Are my email notifications on? All of that stuff is basic stuff, basic mental hygiene that most people, even though they know it, they kind of ignore it. I wonder, is that you? Maybe you're different. But one thing you could consider as a little extra challenge, if you're up for it, is maybe go for a walk for every day for either 45 minutes to an hour, but go without a phone. So you won't be listening to podcasts like this or anything else. And just practice letting your mind float. Let it find unexpected connections. Just be there as best you can. Give your mind the freedom to roam. And I think what you'll find is that it freshens up your mind over time, especially. You'll get better ideas. You come more into the moment. The challenge is that your inner voice will likely jump in and say some version of, this is kind of boring. Let's listen to that podcast. Let's listen to something. Let's listen to that book. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I mean, I'm a fan of doing that sometimes, but not all the time. But what about you? I mean, how is your attention? How is your light? Can you relate to what I'm talking about in terms of the spotlight, the starlight and the daylight? I mean, most people I know, I think, have poor starlight and daylight. And I think on reflection, a lot of what I've been doing is trying to help people get time out to improve those areas. And it does make all the difference. And a lot of people, I think, on the spotlight side are probably maybe too focused on that. But even in that area, they're still getting too distracted. And I think if you're listening to this, I suppose the last question I'll ask is, well, what instinctively do you think would help you improve your attention, your light? Which one do you want to focus on first? Because ultimately, I'm very clear anyway, that like our attention is the most precious inner attribute. And I guess, what are you going to do to protect it? That's it for this week. Ciao for now.